Hi there, my name is Emma, and in today's video I am going to teach you about silent sounds. So I'm going to teach you about B, D, and L in words where we don't pronounce them. So this is a pronunciation video as well as a spelling video. Okay, so if you have trouble with pronunciation and spelling, this video is for you. So I'm going to first explain, actually let's first look at a couple words. I have the word here, climb, Wednesday, and walk. These words have something that's the same in all of them. Okay, they have multiple things that's the same in all of them. But I want you to listen for the pronunciation. Climb. Is there something in here we don't pronounce? Climb. If you said B, we do not pronounce the B, you are correct. What about Wednesday? Wednesday. Am I pronouncing the D in this? Wednesday. No. I do not pronounce the D. Okay. And what about walk? Walk. Is there something I'm not pronouncing in this word? Walk. Do I pronounce every letter? No. Walk. Okay, so the L, if you said the L, I'm not pronouncing the L. You're correct. So in this video, we're going to look at a bunch of words and we're going to learn some rules with their pronunciation when we don't pronounce these sounds or these letters, okay? So let's get started with words like climb, the silent B, okay? So silent B means sometimes in a word we do not pronounce a B. When is this true? Well, the first rule with the silent B is we don't pronounce B when there's an M before it. Okay, so you notice B, MB. If you see an M and a B right after it, the B becomes silent. So we don't ever say climb. No. We say climb. For spelling, we have the B, but for pronunciation, we don't. So let's look at some other words. Dumb. Okay, do you hear a B sound in there? Dumb. No. So again, you'll notice there's an M and a B. We see the M, so we know no pronunciation of the B sound. For those of you who don't know the word dumb, it means the same thing as stupid. You know, that man is very dumb, that man is very stupid. They have the same meaning. Okay, we have another word here, comb. Okay, so comb is like you comb your hair in the morning. Do you hear the B sound? Comb. No, there's no B sound because again, we have this M. So that means no B pronunciation. Okay, you see this? This is a thumb. We have our fingers and our thumb. Now, what do you notice in the spelling of this? You're going to notice a pattern here. We have M. So do we pronounce the B? No, we do not pronounce the B. So we don't say thumb. No, we say thumb. Okay, bomb. If you think about a bomb, an explosion, right? Bomb. Again, same rule. If you have an M, you do not pronounce the B. So we don't say bomb. No, we say bomb. And we get rid of this. Okay, the last word we'll look at for MB pronunciation, limb. So your limbs are your arms and your legs. Okay, so arms and legs are the same thing as your limbs. Now, do we pronounce the B here? If you said no, you are correct, because as you can see, there is an M, so we don't pronounce the B. Okay, so there's another rule when it comes to B pronunciation. Okay, I want you to now look over here. B and T. This word, debt. Do you hear the B in the pronunciation? Debt. You shouldn't hear the B. I did not pronounce the B because when you have B and right after T, usually you don't pronounce the B. There are always exceptions to this rule, but in general, if you see B and T, usually you do not pronounce the B. Okay. So debt, I've heard many students say debt, and they get really tongue twisted don't worry about that because you don't have to pronounce the B. Okay, let's look at some of our other words. Doubt. Again, if you like the band No Doubt, okay, with Gwen Stefani, her old band, you don't have to worry because you don't pronounce the B. It's just doubt. This word, subtle, is a word many native speakers make mistakes with because native speakers actually see the B and they really want to say it, but it's incorrect. We don't say subtle. No, you don't need to worry about the B again because right after it is a T, so we can get rid of this. Subtle. Subtle. Okay? So now let's look at silent Ds and when we don't pronounce Ds in words. Okay, so the next sound we're going to look at is when we don't pronounce D. Okay? So our first rule about silent D is not pronounced when you see spelt D and G together. Okay? So for example, there's a job, judge, like Judge Judy. It's similar to a lawyer, not exactly, but if you know the word judge, we don't say judge, okay? We don't pronounce the D. So just cross that off. Judge. A lot of these words you might not know. That's okay if you don't know these words. Part of this is just actually learning the rule. So when you do learn these words in the future or you learn other words, you'll know how to pronounce them. Hedge. Okay, a hedge is similar to a bush or, it's not exactly a tree, but it's a type of plant. Hedge, again, you see D and G together. We don't pronounce the D. Pledge. Okay, pledge, again, all of these actually kind of rhyme. You see the D and the G together, we don't pronounce the D. Grudge. Grudge, same rule, D and G together. Grudge. Dodge. Okay, D and G are together, so we get rid of dodge. So again, if you see D and G, don't pronounce the D. The other time D is not pronounced, there are certain words where we don't pronounce the D. I don't know the exact reason why. This probably has to do with the history of the language. So I've given some common words where we just don't pronounce the D. The first one is Wednesday. Okay, for days of the week, we don't say Wednesday. We say Wednesday. So it's actually two syllables. Wednesday. Wednesday. So actually this E you can even take out. Wednesday. Okay. Also, if you like to eat sandwiches, you don't need to say sandwich, okay? We say sandwich. So the D is silent. Sandwich. And finally, sometimes you want to talk about, men who are handsome. And by the way, with this word handsome, it kind of means beautiful or pretty, but it's usually for men. We don't usually talk about handsome women. That has a bit of a different meaning. So when we talk about men who are good looking, we use the word handsome. I know you see the word here, hand, but we don't say handsome. We say handsome. So it's as if this D isn't there. All right, so we've talked about silent B's and silent D's. Now let's look at silent L's. So L is silent in words like calm and talk. Okay, so what's the rule for this? When do we not pronounce L? Well, we don't pronounce L after A, O, or U. So after these vowels, we usually don't pronounce L, although there always are exceptions, okay? So if you come across a word where you do pronounce it, this is the general rule, and there are exceptions. So, calm. Okay, this is similar to relax. C-A-L-M. We see the A here. So as a result, calm. We don't say calm. No, calm. All right. A lot of students, this is a very important word, talk. Okay, a lot of students want to say talk. I talked to my friend. We don't pronounce the L. So we say talk. Another very important word. Okay, we have the A. So this means the L is silent. Walk. I know a lot of students have trouble with the pronunciation of L. So this is really nice for you because these words you don't have to worry about pronouncing L at all. Half. So again, half. No L because we have the A here. Okay, now these are our modals. Would, should, could. Would, should, could. We have O and U. So afterwards, you don't need to worry about this L. It's silent. So we say would, should, could. Okay? All right. This word, a lot of people mispronounce. It's a type of fish that people like to eat. Salmon. A lot of students want to say salmon. I like salmon. Don't worry about the L. It's silent. Salmon. Our next word, folk. It means people. If you ever watch President Obama giving a speech, he always used the words folks. Okay, he always says, he's always talking, instead of saying the word people, he uses the word folk, which is a little bit more informal. So with the word folk, there's no L pronunciation, folk. Chalk, same thing. Again, we have the A here, which means no L, chalk. And I've already explained could. The last word, and there's many, these are just some examples of common words. Calf, okay? So a calf is a baby cow. For this word, calf, you do not need to pronounce the L. It is silent. All right. So there are many silent sounds in English, which you don't have to pronounce. You might see them in the spelling, but just because you see them written does not mean you have to pronounce it. So what I'd like you to do is come visit our website at www.engvid.com, and there you can practice all of these by taking our quiz. There's also other videos on pronunciation, so I highly recommend you visit our website. Until next time, take care.